I essentially have a mono recording. I have the entire frequency spectrum and stereo field to fill with only 2 elements to work with, and yet I want to create a mix that has depth, width, and sounds as full as possible. I always start with defining a concept for the mix. What do I want my mix to sound like? Am I going for retro sound or contemporary sound? Since we essentially recorded a live performance, due to leakage, our mix options are pretty limited, but there are still a few things we can do to make it shine. First thing I'll do is listen to the track itself. Whatever aspect I decide to start with in my mix, I'll have to consider the guitar and vocals as a whole. So I'll constantly be checking the mix against itself to make sure what I'm doing complements the overall sound. I typically know how I want the final mix to sound before I even touch a fader. There are 6 major mix elements I'll use: EQ, which affects the tone; compression, which affects the dynamics; reverb, which creates a space for the performance; delay, which is like an echo and can fill out the performance even more; saturation and distortion, which enhances my overall sound; and automation, programming certain things to happen at certain places. Along with that, I'll use panning and volume to find the right balance between the 2 instruments. The first thing I'll start out with is filtering out any unnecessary frequencies in my tracks. Frequency is the number of times a waveform cycles per second. Here we have a representation of 3 cycles per 1 second, which we refer to as 3 Hz. When it comes to frequency, there is plenty to cover. For the sake of this beginner's class, we are briefly going to discuss filtering frequencies. Then in our more advanced lessons, we'll dive deeper into this very important topic. We generally divide the frequency range into 4 sections: low frequencies, mid-lows, mid-highs, and high frequencies. The human ear on average can hear frequencies as low as 20 Hz, which is like the rumble of an earthquake, to as high as 20,000 Hz, which is just below the pitch of a dog whistle. Every instrument contains a wide range of frequencies, but only the ones between 20 Hz and 20 kHz are important to us. The acoustic guitar has a fundamental frequency of about 80 Hz. That means anything below 80 Hz is probably an unnecessary sound that we can filter out. Often, this is the sound of air conditioning, large trucks passing by, or airplanes flying overhead. Even though your studio may be soundproofed, you can never truly block out all ambient sound. So, I can place a high-pass filter on the guitar set around 80 Hz. This eliminates unnecessary sounds below 80 Hz and gives me the foundation of a good, clean mix. Next, I'll use the EQ to sweep across the frequency spectrum on the guitar, listening for any frequencies that seem to muffle or compete with the sound of the vocal track. Then, I'll dip those frequencies out of the guitar to help carve a space for the vocals to sit. Or, if that doesn't give me the effect that I want, we can increase those frequencies in the vocal track, creating more definition between the guitar and the vocals. Be careful to make sure you aren't altering the sound of the mix too much. Your goal here is to clean up and define the sound, not drastically change it. Let's take a moment to listen to the guitar and the vocal together.
So many miles away you are, reaching for the stars. I do believe. Oh, I do believe. Oh.
Something we can experiment with is changing the panning of the 2 instruments. The mix will sound awkward if I pan the vocals hard left and the guitar hard right, or vice versa. However, I could try moving the 2 instruments slightly away from the center for a subtler effect. Let's pan the vocal maybe 6% to the left. Now let's pan the guitar maybe 30% to the right. We've created separation between the 2 tracks by moving them to different places on our mix stage. If this amount of separation is too much, try moving the guitar closer to the center of the mix. Experiment until you find the right balance between the 2. We're using leakage to our advantage here. Even though we pan the vocal and the guitar to 2 different positions, it doesn't feel that way to the listener. Make sure to rebalance the volume levels of the 2 tracks after you've found a panning balance you like. I can separate the guitar and vocal tracks a little more by experimenting with stereo reverb and stereo delay. First, I'll set up 2 aux tracks in my DAW, one for the reverb and the other for the delay. Then, I'll use buses to send some of my guitar and vocal signals to both. That way I can easily adjust the balance between the dry or unaffected sound of my tracks with the wet or affected sound of the reverb and delayed signals. Then I'll adjust the sound levels until I feel the guitar and the vocal tracks have a different depth from one another.
I'm drunk with possibility and sleeping just to see you in my dreams. So many miles away you are, I'm reaching for the stars. I do believe. Oh, I do believe.
There are a few major controls to take note of with reverb. First, there are tons of presets to choose from. Each one gives the listener a different feel, so choose one appropriate for your mix. Consider the space you want the guitar to occupy. Is it large? Is it small? Is it made of wood, tile, fully carpeted? More importantly, is it a real space or is it an imaginary space? Aside from all the rooms to choose from, there's also the plate and spring reverb settings. These are replications of vintage reverbs. Spring reverb is just a spring suspended in a metal box, so it has a twangy sound. Think 60s surf rock. Plate reverb can be really nice on vocals. It's a large metal plate suspended in a box, producing a lush reverb with kind of a controlled delay, so it doesn't step over the next musical line. We're looking for a reverb setting that complements our mix thus far by separating the guitar and the vocal, but doesn't make the vocal sound too distant when added back into the mix. You can see how big an issue leakage can be. Because I'm considering the effect this will have on the vocal, I might also consider looking at another control on my reverb, the pre-delay setting. Pre-delay is the time between hearing the original sound and hearing its reverb. When reverb is heard immediately along with the direct sound, the listener perceives the instrument as far away. By turning pre-delay up, I can increase the time between my original sound and my reverberated sound. This can make the listener feel like they are up close to the instrument, but still in a large space.
I'm drunk with possibility and sleeping just to see you in my dreams. So many miles away you are, I'm reaching for the stars. I do believe.
I can experiment with the pre-delay time to find a setting that works best with my mix. Delay, which is essentially an echo, can be used to fill up our sonic space a little more. There are 4 major delay times you typically consider: short delay, slap delay, and medium and long delays, which increase the time between the original sound and the repeated sound. I'll start with the medium delay, increase the feedback, which increases the amount of echoes we hear, and turn on the low-pass filter, which gives the echoes a muffled, natural sound to them. Now, I'll experiment with how much signal descends to the delay, if any. Sometimes this helps fill up the space in the mix. Other times it's too obtrusive and distracting.
Sleeping just to see you in my dreams. So many miles away.
Finally, I'll add a saturation effect to the guitar. This will warm up the guitar sound a little bit and make it feel even richer. Let's A/B this effect. It's subtle, but it's there. Let's focus on the vocal track now. Sometimes in a mix, I'll separate the vocal track from the other instruments by compressing the vocal track pretty heavily. This gives that vocal a nice in-your-face sort of feel. However, since we have bleed from the guitar in our vocal track, this will only serve to make that leakage even more apparent. So, if I decide to add more compression, I'll have to carefully monitor my guitar track to make sure I'm not altering the sound too drastically.
Really know your taste. Used to know your face quite well. A promise I couldn't make. My heart is yours to take home now. I'm drunk with possibility
I can EQ the vocal track to make it stand out more. First, I'm going to remove unnecessary frequency content. For a male vocalist, that's typically anything below 80 Hz. Listen to the vocal with the guitar and start moving the high-pass filter higher in the frequency range. Move it until the vocal stops sounding full, then pull it back a little. Everything below that is only serving to muddy up the mix. If the high-pass filter seems too excessive or extreme, you can use a filter to reduce the lows before you start cutting them. Try sweeping those frequencies first to see if anything overwhelmingly boxy or muddy sticks out. This will clean up the sound and keep your vocals sounding natural. Next, we'll add some brightness or air to the vocal. This will help the vocal stand out from the guitar and feel more intimate and exciting to the listener. Sweep through the mid-high and high-range frequencies and listen for where the vocals start to sound sweet or more pronounced over the guitar. Then widen your Q and lower the boost to only half a dB to several dB. Be careful not to boost too much. Next, let's experiment with reverb and delay. Again, we're dealing with leakage, so any amount of reverb or delay we add will affect the guitar, so make sure you monitor the vocal and guitar together. You can use the same reverb as the guitar, or experiment with a different one. Try out pre-delay, see if it separates your vocal from the guitar. Try increasing the delay, and see if it fills out the space more. There is no right or wrong balance here, just, in your opinion, what fits the mix best.
I'm drunk with possibility, sleeping just to see you in my dreams. So many miles away you are, reaching for the stars. I do believe. Oh, I do believe.
One goal when I mix is to have a vocal track that sounds pleasant to the listener at soft and loud vocal levels. I try to accomplish this as I'm recording, but there are also some things I can do in the mix to help this. I work at fine-tuning the smoothness of the vocal track by using automation. Every great mix uses automation. It's one of the secret ingredients. Listen through the vocal line and lower the volume when the vocalist isn't singing, and raise the volume when you need to add more loudness to a particular part. Again, be mindful of how this is affecting the tone of your guitar. If you can hear changes in the guitar, you probably shouldn't do it.
I really know your taste. Used to know your face quite well. A promise I couldn't make. My heart is yours to take. Calm down. I'm drunk with possibility, and sleeping just to see you in my dreams. So many miles away you are, reaching for